Governor Greg Abbott, everyone. I think they're happy to see you. I think they're glad you're their governor.
Well, I'm astonished because when I listen to liberal media, they tell me there are no young conservatives. They make it sound like all the young folks in Texas and across the United States are liberal. You are proving otherwise. The future of America is conservative, and you are those leaders.
I fully agree. Governor, it's an honor to have you here today. You're in the middle of a re-election campaign statewide, and you took the time to meet with us and these young people. And all of you, thank you. Again, you took the time off your busy weekend to be here as well.
I did squeeze in the Texas OU game yesterday, though.
Yeah, you did. All right.
Aggie.
There's got to be a lot of Aggies in here, I would assume. We're just okay. Well, you know what? Let's not cause divisions. We're all united here. Now, all right. And you made it here, even though we're still busy helping New York understand what it's like to deal with the immigration crisis that we're dealing with. And so I want to talk about the immigration crisis. A lot of the things that you've done and made a lot of headlines for. What do you think of the media when they try to vilify you for simply giving people a bus ticket? I thought this was their dream, to go to the Big Apple. What's wrong with that?
One word, and that is hypocrisy. The media is hypocritical. Mayor Adams in New York is hypocritical. Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. is hypocritical. Listen, these mayors in these cities, they are self-declared sanctuary cities. They're supposed to be welcoming everybody who's coming across the border illegally, but when they have just a few hundred people show up, they're flummoxed. They cannot respond to it. They're calling out the National Guard. They're begging the president for help. Mayor Adams is trying to appropriate $1 billion for New York to be able to respond to a couple of thousand people. We get a couple of thousand people every few hours in the state of Texas. This is not a Texas problem with the illegal immigration. This is a United States problem caused by the Biden administration, and it must be addressed at the national level.
And, you know, I've had to defend this quite a few times, too. I have to note that they're complaining about 5,000. They meet at most 10,000 at a time in a city of millions. And we're dealing with that in Texas on a daily basis at our southern border. Our agents, our DPS agents are exhausted and tired. Our Border Patrol agents are exhausted and tired. Morale is low. They don't know what they signed up for. And it's a true dereliction of duty on the part of the executive, is it not?
Completely. It's beyond a dereliction of duty on behalf of the president. It's an abandonment of its constitutional responsibility, which maybe first and foremost is to secure our national security. Let me explain. So we're having, as he was talking about, we're having thousands of people coming across our border every single day into small communities in Texas. It could be Eagle Pass or Del Rio or whatever the name may be. These communities are about 10 or 25,000 people in population, and they have 1,000 or 2,000 people dumped off in their communities every single day. That's one of the ways in which there's a dereliction of duty, because the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Security, they are not applying and following and enforcing the immigration laws that were passed by Congress. And so the President of the United States is in complete dereliction of not following the Constitution and the laws passed by Congress. But it gets worse than that, because under the Biden administration, over the past year, there have been more than 80 people who were on the terrorist watch list who were apprehended by Border Patrol. Understand this fact, and that is everybody comes across the border, gets across the border by paying money to drug cartels to get them across the border. You may see people on TV who are coming across the border in single file going to a particular point in the United States. Those are people that the cartel are directing to a location that is owned or controlled or operated by the federal government, because they know once they get to that point, the Border Patrol there is just going to process their paperwork and let them go. The deal is that if you are on the terrorist watch list, you pay extra money so that you will not be caught. And so for us to know that we've apprehended just in the past year more than 80 people on the terrorist watch list, here's what we do not know. What about all of the people on the terrorist watch list who paid a lot of money not to be caught and were not caught? What we have in the United States of America is an untold number of terrorists in this country who will be seeking to do harm to this country. We know that we have arrested and apprehended people from China, from Russia, from countries that are hostile to the United States of America, and Joe Biden is doing nothing to stop those people from coming across the border. It is time for a new president. We must get rid of President Biden.
Governor, you're in a difficult spot here because this is federal law that's not being enforced. It's the Fed's job to run border security for our country. You don't have a country if you don't have some sense of sovereignty. They're truly derelicting their duty here. What can Texas do? What have you done? You've done quite a bit, so let's run us through that. And then let's end with the last thing that you recently did, because we've used the word terrorist, people on the terrorist watch list. But I think it goes deeper than that. And I just want to add to your point, by the way. The only reason we even saw 80 terrorists was because we'd actually been tracking them. So that takes enough resources as it is. Imagine how many more that we don't necessarily track as they move from country to country or track their finances. It's a very difficult problem to solve. So what has Texas done, and why might we be looking at these cartels as a true enemy of the state?
Sure. So if you go back through American history, which all of you are incredibly well versed in, but go back to the days of when George Washington was president, all the way to the days during which Joe Biden is president. Texas has taken action that no state in the history of the United States has ever taken. Texas is the first and only state to build our own border wall to secure our sovereignty of the great state of Texas and the United States of America. For people who make it past that wall or other barriers that we have erected, such as using military-grade razor wire, we have the National Guard at different locations on the border. The National Guard's primary responsibility is to turn back people who are attempting to come across the border. They have turned back or returned back tens of thousands of people who were trying to come across the border. If the illegal immigrants make it past the National Guard, they then would be encountered by the Texas Department of Public Safety. Texas DPS will either arrest them and put them in jail. We converted 3 prisons into state jails where we're now jailing people for coming across the border illegally and committing a crime in the state of Texas. And if they're not jailed, DPS, under my executive order, is required to arrest them and return them back to the border. And the only other thing that happens in high volume, as I was telling you about earlier, and that is most of the migrants, as they are directed by the cartels, are making it to federal-controlled property. Those are people over which the state of Texas has zero authority whatsoever. If they turn themselves in to the Border Patrol and they get paperwork, they get what's called an NTA. NTA is Notice to Appear. It's just a document where they have to appear sometime in the future for an asylum proceeding. But what we both know is it's really a notice to disappear in the United States of America. Yeah. And so what happened is the Biden administration was, after the NTA was given to these migrants, they would be dropped off into these small communities. And that's what began this process of the busing operation. I was down at a big meeting of all the local mayors and county judges and sheriffs and police chiefs in the region, and they were talking about how their tiny little communities were completely overrun by these migrants, and they were begging for help in one way or another. And someone piped up and said, "Listen, man, we need to bust them out of here." And I said, and this was this last April, I said, "You guys don't worry about that. I'm going to take care of that. We're going to begin that the next week." And it was the following week that we first began busing these migrants first to Washington, D.C. So why Washington, D.C.? One very simple reason, and that is, go back in time 2 years ago, we had the fewest number of illegal immigrants coming across the border because the Trump administration's policies of remaining in Mexico, Title 42, in catch and release, and building a border wall, those 4 policies led to the lowest number of illegal border crossings in 40 years. And what Biden did was to come into office and to eliminate all of those policies. But not once has Biden been down to the border to see the chaos that he caused. And so we figured if Joe Biden will not come to the border, Texas is going to take the border to Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. Let me finish with this.
Yeah, there's...
So we kept busing to Washington, D.C., and quite literally, out of nowhere, Mayor Adams of New York started criticizing me for busing migrants to New York City, which we had not done. And after he said that we were busing people to New York City for a week, and we showed documentation, no, they were only going to Washington, D.C. But Mayor Adams will not stop complaining about Texas, which I can understand because he's envious of Texas. Anyway, after a while I figured, if we're going to get the criticism, by God, I'm going to get the credit. And so we started...
I didn't know that. That's kind of
And that began the busing of, to New York City. And then, of course, we had to add Lori Lightfoot and the city of Chicago to the list also. Because, listen, these are all cities that are self-declared sanctuary cities that have more than enough supplies to deal with this overflow of migrants, far more than these tiny border communities. But the last thing that you mentioned was what we did with regard to the cartels. And so one of the deadliest things that happens because of these open border policies is the importation of fentanyl. You may have heard this, but in case you haven't, I want to go through this very quickly, and that is fentanyl is one of the deadliest drugs. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a deadly dose. The key components of fentanyl come from China to Mexico, where the drug cartels mix it and lace it onto other different types of drugs. And then they make it look like drugs that would be purchased from a pharmacy because they look like pharmaceutical brand drugs. Anyway, they are bringing that deadly fentanyl across the border. The leading cause of death for people between 18 and 45, which I assume most everybody in this crowd falls within that group, the leading cause of death for Americans between 18 and 45 is not cancer, it's not COVID, it's not guns, it's not car wrecks, whatever the case may be. It is fentanyl. And all it takes is one pill. People think they're taking one other type of pill, not having any clue whatsoever that laced onto that pill is fentanyl, and it's called one pill kill. And it's killing people across the country, killing people across the state of Texas. And because of what's done and because of the magnitude of how much fentanyl has come across the border, to show you the magnitude, just in the past year, just Texas law enforcement alone, they have seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the entire United States of America. This could be the leading cause of death that the country has ever seen. And we have to attack it head on, and because the Biden administration is not attacking it head on, 2 weeks ago, I declared the cartels as terrorist organizations that our state is going to go after.
It's got a good synergy here because I'm running for the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and we're going to address this head on. And you've got a lot of great Texans that are going to address this head on. I hope to be chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. You'll see Mike McCall as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. You'll see Kay Granger as chairwoman of Appropriations Committee. Jim Jordan will be chairman of Judiciary Committee. All of these committees are important to address this issue. You've got 2 crises, really, if you want to divide it up and go argue with your liberal classmates, which is, again, this is the point of this, right? I want to give you the tools. Divide this into 2 crises, the immigration crisis and the security crisis. They're related, but different. The immigration crisis is a lack of law enforcement. We're We're letting the abuse of our asylum process happen over and over and over again. There's ways to fix that. You know, you should not be able to just walk across our border and know that you'll get a bus ticket to New York or Austin or wherever you want to go. You shouldn't know that. You should think, I might get deported back. And if you don't think that, then you have an incentive to cross. Immigration policy is truly that simple. Then there's the security crisis, and this has developed over the years, and it's gotten a lot worse to the point where we agree we need to be on a war footing with these cartels. They have a zero-risk policy of charging people, what's called a piso, to walk across the Rio Grande. They'll even fight each other for those plazas because it's such good land for them to send people across. These are some of the best trained, best equipped groups in the world. And I say that as a former SEAL. When I talk to a lot of my buddies, and we've been talking about this for years, we always wondered why we were deploying to the Middle East. It's like, we could just drive to Tijuana. We were in San Diego, of course. And there was cartel wars happening there. Why don't we look at this problem in that way? We have to. I'd hate to say it. We don't want to be hyperbolous, and I am not one for hyperbole, and I don't think you are either. But this is that serious of a situation because of what they're doing with fentanyl and how they terrorize the Mexican government.
Well, they terrorize the Mexican government, but they also terrorize the people of the United States of America. And it's essential for the state of Texas to step up and fight back. But more importantly, this is an issue that the United States government must be in charge of and fight back. One of the biggest threats we have in the United States of America right now is being caused by these Mexican drug cartels, and we as a country must fight back and crush them and eliminate their presence in the United States of America.
Governor, I want to shift the conversation to policy differences between Texas and California. These are important comparisons for obvious reasons. They're both really big states. Texas is Republican-controlled, Senate, House, governorship, and Democrats control every part of California. And so it makes for a very good comparison when you're trying to understand what policies work and what policies don't. Again, I want you to bring back these arguments to your classmates, whether it's at Rice or in high school or wherever it is, and help them understand why they should vote for Governor Abbott this November and not Beto. Because Beto will California or Texas. Gets most of his donations probably from California, if we're being honest. And so, obviously we know that a big policy difference would be how we view the border. That seems pretty self-evident. We don't need to hit that anymore. What are some of the other best, maybe your top 3 contrasts in policy that make Texas the place to be? Our cost of living is better, our energy prices are lower. It's voted number 1 for business every year. But what happens here that allows that environment to occur, and it's different from California?
So to distill it down to a 1 or 2 word answer, and that is that the biggest difference between California and Texas is in California, they believe that government should micromanage your lives. In Texas, we believe that you know far better how to run your own life than does government, and so we keep government out of your life. The same concept applies to businesses. They, in California, try to micromanage businesses and tax them to the hilt, whereas we know in Texas that the people who run businesses, they know far better how to run the business, how to make a profit, and hence, in Texas, it's the land of freedom. There's one classic example. There's many I could give you, and I could tell you this very important factoid, and that is, under my leadership over the past 8 years, Texas has been the #1 economic leader. Texas has ranked #1 as the best state for doing business every year that I've been governor. Texas has added far more jobs since I was last reelected than any other state in the United States. Texas has the fastest growing gross domestic product in the United States of America. And this past May, Texas became home to more Fortune 500 company headquarters than any other state in the United States of America.
That's good for your job prospects, I think.
But all that said, let me give you one example. One example of someone who was truly innovative and maybe one of the smartest people in the world and the richest person in the world, and that is Elon Musk. So let's go back to April of 2020, and that was in the early stages of COVID. Elon called up and said he wanted to build a new gigafactory, and there was no way he could do it in California, where they were currently located at that time, and he wanted to explore the opportunities in the state of Texas. We reached an agreement in June of 2020, and for him to be able to build his gigafactory. And only after that did they begin to turn the dirt on which the factory was built, and they were able to finish a more than mile-long gigafactory and to begin rolling cars off of it in 18 months. He went on Twitter and posted, in 18 months, he was able to build a gigafactory in the state of Texas. In 18 months, he would still not have his first permit in California. That's the difference between doing business in Texas and California. So two other big differences between Texas and California, which also tie in to two big differences between my campaign and Beto's campaign. And that one is public safety. You see all these videos when you're watching TV about the crime sprees in Los Angeles and San Francisco, the smash and grab operations where criminals are not held accountable whatsoever. There are two reasons for that. And that's because California has adopted this mantra of defund the police and let them loose out of jail with little or no bail. Texas has taken the opposite position. In Texas, those of you who live here, you may know, you may remember, that even in Texas, we have one city that seems to want to copycat what's going on in California, and that city is Austin, Texas. In Austin, a couple of years ago, they actually defunded their police by more than $100 million. And so I led a group of Republicans that drew a line in the sand, and we said, not in Texas are we going to allow our law enforcement to be defunded, because in Texas, we support our law enforcement officers, period.
It's a shame that we even have to make that point.
And so here's what we did. We passed a law that will now defund any city that defunds their law enforcement.
Yep.
On the bail policy, is there anybody here who lives in Harris County?
Probably quite a few. Yeah.
So you all know there's already ads running against Alina Hidalgo and the let them loose bail policies they have here. Over the past 2 years, there have been more than 200 people killed each year by people who were let out on bail. I was here last month, days after a police officer was shot and killed by someone who was arrested for murder last year and let out on bail, only to kill a law enforcement officer here in Houston, Texas. For the past 3 years, more than 300 women have been victims of sexual assault in Harris County by somebody who was let out on bail. What's going on in Harris County is what's going on in California. It's dangerous, it's reckless, and we cannot have Beto perpetuate that. I am running for re-election to restore safety and security here in Harris County and across the state of Texas. And then the last key difference I'll point out, there's a long list, but I'll point this one out, and that is under President Trump, and with the aid and help of Texas, which if it were its own country, would rank third or fourth in oil and gas production, America once again became energy independent. That has been decimated by what happened in the Biden administration, where they've worked to kill from the very beginning days of the Biden administration to eliminate the ability for America to produce the oil and gas and the energy that not only we need, but that other countries need. Beto has adopted and embraced the fullness of the Green New Deal radical leftist policies that would decimate the production of oil and gas. It would kill hundreds of thousands of great paying jobs in the state of Texas, but worse, would make us dependent on foreign sources of energy. That is wrong, and I'm running for re-election to keep Texas energy independent and the #1 producer of oil and gas in the country.
That's a lot of good reasons to vote Republican in Texas. And look, you should write down these stats, folks. I mean, Californians pay $6,800 per capita in state and local taxes each year. Texans, $4,400. So only 2/3 of what Californians pay. According to the cost of living factors, Texas scored 90 on this index, while California was near last at 139 as far as cost of living. Regulations, we have 36% fewer regulatory restrictions. That's better for small businesses. Big businesses, they can work through regulations. They've got compliance teams, not small businesses. You need to have less taxes and less regulation. Average cost in Texas for housing is a little over $1,000, and the average cost of rent for an apartment in California was $1,600. Homeless population, they have more, as you can imagine. Electricity prices are cheaper. Our business growth is better. Educational achievement. In 2020, Texas was one of the top states for high school graduation at 94%. California was down 86%. Population growth, we're growing. Californians are coming here, not the other way around. And I think they're voting the right way. I'm actually not as worried about that as people sometimes are. You want to take a few questions from the audience?
Sure.
That'd be great. Line up, folks. Yeah, okay, they're excited. Hey, let's give me an actual time on here, please.
Back up.
We'll start right here.
Okay, my name is Lexi Jones. I'm a junior at Ridgepoint High School, and I don't have a question, but will you take my Be Real?
What?
Will you take my Be Real? It's like a new social media thing where you take a picture.
You just want to take
Yeah.
go for it. Hey, we'll just say hello. Yeah, do it real quick. Sure. I don't know. I don't quite understand what to do here.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you want to? Okay, you want to selfie it? All right, sure.
Here,
I don't.
y'all take the picture, and it takes a picture from both cameras.
I gotcha. Here we go, Governor.
The legend.
You got to do what the people want. All right. Here you go.
Good to meet you, Leslie. All the best to you. Good luck in school.
All right. Hey, it's a cool shirt. Where'd you get it?
From outside.
Yeah.
So I have a very important question. My name is Kevin. I'm from Houston, Texas. Republicans are currently divided between DeSantis and Trump right now. What should the plan be come election time to unify conservatives to ensure we're in the White House in 2024?
Yeah, so I'm having a hard time getting good audio from that. Could I get you to, and maybe holding the mic up a little bit closer?
Yeah, you guys got to enunciate.
And slow down a tiny bit.
Republicans are currently divided between DeSantis and Trump right now. What should the plan be come election time to unify Republicans to ensure we're in the White House in 2024?
Right. So listen, we need to understand what's at stake. I think most Americans, and I'm going beyond Republicans here, most Americans have understood now, painfully so, what was at stake. You know how unfavorable Biden's ratings are on every issue of importance. And so the time has come, not just for Republicans to unite, but for Americans to unite, to restore sanity in the White House, to make sure that we're going to have governance that will keep America secure, keep our streets safe, that will restore law and order in this country. And I think that with Joe Biden and his record, and Kamala Harris and what she's doing or not doing, it will unite all of us. And we are going to win in 2024. And that will be after we win in 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here.
Okay. Can y'all hear me well?
Sure.
Okay. Governor Abbott, not if, but when you demolish Beto in the race for governor, what will be the main focus or goal of your next 4 years in office?
Sure. So there's several things we want to do. One was this issue I talked about earlier about what's going on in Harris County as well as around the state of Texas. The safety and security of everybody in our entire state must be put paramount. We have to eliminate all these woke leftist agenda issues of letting people loose. Relatedly, we must eliminate from our schools the woke leftist agenda that's corrupting the minds of our kids in our classrooms. Another thing, and that is that because our economy is doing so incredibly well, Texas is sitting on a budget surplus of $27 billion that we need to spend over the next 2 years. Part of that will go to address important issues such as education and health care, et cetera. But whose money is that anyway? Exactly. And so we want to return it to you with the largest property tax cut ever in the history of the state of Texas. Not to mention keeping up with our border security and keeping our border secure.
Over here.
My name's Rania, and I am a first-generation American. Along with that, I was the leading plaintiff in the case against the new Ellis redistricting plan, and I wanted to ask you, where do you think voter security is coming? I mean, we saw the last election, and then we saw how race is misrepresented in just our new districts, and how that just, I personally was against it. So where do you think that puts us at risk in voting security?
So listen, election integrity is of paramount importance. First, some context, and that is, I was the Attorney General before I was the governor. And I prosecuted more voter fraud cases than any other Attorney General before me. Voter fraud is real, it must be stopped, and we are taking action to make sure that we eliminate voter fraud in the state of Texas. Second, and that is, go back in time, and the minds of a lot of you will be refreshed when I remind you of this. During the last session, we had a very tough election integrity law that was up to be passed the night before the regular session ended. It was at that time that the Democrats broke quorum and went off to Washington, D.C. with nothing more than a 12-pack of Miller Lite. And then they stayed there thinking they were going to prevent us from passing an election integrity bill. We knew they were going to come back. When they came back, we passed an even tougher election integrity bill. They did several things. One, it addressed the two primary ways in which voter fraud are committed. One is through mail-in ballot, the other is through ballot harvesting. Both of those actions are now felonies in the state of Texas, and we will put people behind bars if they commit that. But your question was kind of specific to Harris County. So in the COVID election, there was no bigger offender with regard to election confusion, election alteration, election schematics than Harris County. Let me tell you something that a lot of people may not know, and that is the United States Constitution gives to states the authority to be in charge of election laws, not counties, not even the federal government. It's the states that are in charge of election laws. During the COVID election, Harris County came up with all these schemes like drive-through voting and all that kind of stuff.
Because you need to vote at 3 a.m. and a drive-through. It's the only way you can vote,
exactly.
Right?
And so that were not authorized by state law. And so we eliminated all of these schemes that Harris County put in place, made it a crime to commit what Harris County did, and we cleaned up the mess that was caused by Harris County. Now we have one set of rules that applies across the entire state of Texas that everybody's going to have to follow. Otherwise, people will be going to jail.
There was another really important lesson from how all that played out was it was a how-to manual on how to get rid of your Democrats. Because they all came to D.C. and were complaining about this election law. And we would ask them, okay, what is it specifically you don't like about it? Specifically? I mean, like which part? They have no idea. Exactly. It was a hilarious time. I don't know if you all remember that.
Hi, I'm Cassie Baker from Kyle, Texas, and I was wondering what has been the most difficult part about securing the border?
So this is easy and profound. The most difficult part about securing the border has not been the cartels, has not been the people who are trying to get across the border. Without a doubt, the most difficult about securing the border is the United States federal government. They are an enemy to secure border. Remember this, when Joe Biden ran for office, as well as all these other Democrats, I did something probably nobody here did, because I believe in doing opposition research, and so I watched the Democrat debates for President of the United States. And when they debated, they all stood for the same proposition of open border policies, perhaps not really knowing what it meant, and most Americans not knowing what it meant. I knew exactly what it meant. And what Joe Biden has done, his administration has done, not only has caused these open border policies, but they are the biggest obstacle for us to be able to maintain safety and security on the border. The Biden administration must be eliminated, period.
I would add to that real fast. The other difficulty is this oversized sense of compassion that Democrats have. And this oversized sense of compassion means they don't think very well or straight on this particular issue. So they have and this is speaking to their best intentions, because there's definitely some more cynical intentions, which is I think they think they can reverse our elections and by reversing our demography a little bit. But if it's their best intentions and they just want people to have a better life, this is a pathological sense of compassion. You can have too much compassion, and this results in policies that are not well thought out at all. It results in policies where they're too afraid to disincentivize illegal immigration, disincentivize breaking our laws. And I think what you did with the busing was a perfect revealing of that hypocrisy, because they want a virtue signal. They want to say they're compassionate, but they don't want to really do it.
Right.
That's our biggest. Let's do one more.
Okay, how's it going, Governor Abbott?
Going great. How you doing?
Awesome.
Good.
My name's Owen Merrill. I go to Kingwood High School with my buddy Preston. And there's a real problem with kids applying to college these days, and it's the top 10% rule. So to get into A&M automatic admission is top 10%, and the UT's top 6%, right? Last year, to May's business school, like 92% of admits were top 10%. So it's basically impossible for us to get into these business schools, right? Like, what do you think would be a good solution for that? Because wherever you're applying and wherever you go to public school, you know, your chances to get in these top schools are subjective to wherever you go to public school, right? So, like, if I go to Kingwood High School, if I transfer to Humboldt, like, I guarantee you I'd be in the top 10%, but not at Kingwood, right?
Right. So listen, clearly it is a law that's not working well. We're very familiar with a lot of students who could not get into Texas-based colleges or universities because of that rule, who wound up getting into Ivy League schools. Now it's turned out that Ivy League schools really aren't all that great to get into these days, and so that's helped a little bit. But we cannot be losing the best and brightest minds that we have in the state of Texas going to schools in the other states, and so we're going to be working on modifying that so we can keep you right here in the Lone Star State, making Texas even better.
That's a great question. Yeah. Governor, I think we're out of time. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending your day with us and these kids. Obviously, you can tell they are very enthused to speak to you. Thank you all for asking the governor such great questions. Governor Abbott, thank you for saving our state.
Thank you, man. Thank y'all very much.